Tell me when we're ready. Okay, there we go. We've got, I think, all of council here. Councillor Muskoka joined us. Is she on yet?
Yes.
She is. Okay. I'd like to officially call this meeting to order at 10:05 on this, the 12th day of January. Happy New Year to everyone. And hope you all had a good holiday, some family time, and hopefully didn't attend large party gatherings. I do note that all of council is present. We have some senior staff with us as well, and many of our other senior staff are zooming in just to observe today's meeting. Also probably like to welcome and those who are observing. I'm pretty sure that every other district council in Muskoka is probably tuning into this meeting today, as well as many of the clerks around the district. So welcome to you all as well. We do also need to acknowledge that today we are on lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples, and Indigenous peoples have characterized this territory for the benefit of our future generations. Their stewardship throughout the ages is certainly recognized. Public comment today was received. We had a couple of public comment, one from Mr. Pearce, one from Mr. Munro. And then we also had two others, one from Mr. Nicolau, as well as Corinne Hagerman. And both Mr. Pearce and Mr. Munro are delegating today. The other two people sent council directly some correspondence, and they are in support of the delegates' positions as we move forward. We do not have any supplemental agenda today, but I will ask council if we have any declarations of pecuniary interest. I am seeing none. Before we get into sort of the proceedings of today, I want to thank everybody, first of all, for another special meeting, which seems to be the mantra, I guess, of this term of council, and especially the past 12 months. But the other thing, I just want to ask a question of council. We've actually had a request, and a great request, from one of our councillors. We circulated on Friday some of the questions that are contained within the slide deck today, and asked for council's input, more to really get some thought process and to put down on paper, articulate our thoughts in writing. And everybody, and many people did that, so thank you very much. And that's certainly going to help facilitate our discussion today, that we've all thought long and hard about that. But the request was that that document that we all received yesterday afternoon and evening, that could also become part of the public record. And I'll turn to council at this particular point. Does anyone have any objection to that document that was circulated by the clerk's office becoming part of the public record at this point? Not seeing any. So Madam Clerk, we will publish that for those people wondering. So basically the questions in the document council have articulated, and we'll talk our way through many of those. But I think it helped all of council see that there are varying opinions through many of this questions. So thank you, first of all, for doing that, and we will be circulating it. I want to back up a little bit and just highlight a few things before we get going. And so back in November, when I had advised council that we had some pending discussion and decisions regarding our modernization committee at the district, it was clear that many around this table in particular were taken aback, felt they didn't have the information, they wanted more information, and that we really needed to have a discussion here around Muskoka Lakes table prior to the district decision. In December, our clerk provided us a report that advised of some timing, and also a request to the minister regarding the deadline extension that the district had requested. The clerk's report also highlighted when in the process specifically Muskoka Lakes would have an opportunity to provide input and actually vote on a decision that would be made by the district. Notwithstanding that future council debate, which will also come, today should be used as for our internal discussion and to put some new ideas on the table to help advise our district councillors, provide them with greater understanding, more input, more perspectives on this extremely controversial topic. So today, my plan would be to have an open and focused discussion, however, expressing personal opinions and ideas in advance of any district decision. People have also commented, by the way, that it was too fast or too rushed, or why are we sitting here right now, that we haven't had time to deal with this. Well, to back up a little bit, about a year and a half ago, during the winter of 2019, I guess almost 2 years ago now, the ministry advised that they had wanted to have several modernization meetings, and they did so with all regional governments. They also opened it up to many of our councillors, and I know many people around this table spoke to the ministry. We were all hoping that the province would come together and basically advise us to what future district council size should look like and its methodology behind that. Unfortunately, late last fall, the ministry declined to comment and basically put it back on our district council, saying, we're not going to make the decision, you make the decision. So all regional councils were in the same boat. Fast forward throughout the winter, some meetings started, and then COVID hit, and we shut down all communication and all meeting schedules, and we were able to get back to the modernization committee mid-summer, and we progressed through that throughout the fall. So hence the reason in November, people may have said we're taking it back. The deadline for the end of the year or mid-December to have that conversation, we're not alone in requesting an extension from the ministry. So there were several regional governments that requested that and have also been granted that. I do also want to thank each and every one of you, even for those who didn't submit comments to the written clerk over the weekend. The results, I believe, from the events leading up to today is that each and every councillor, myself included, now has more information and a better understanding of what can or would make a perfect world, the township of Muskoka Lakes, what we would like to really see out of this review. As we work through the material today, I'm sure each of you have noticed from the circulated document that every opinion within our council is also varied. It's going to make the decision very difficult for district council. Ultimately, a supportive and objection vote around the table will be very controversial. I also, as we walk through today, one thing I would like to put on the table for everyone, including those people who are going to be presenting to us today, is that of what if? What if the collective desires of Muskoka Lakes are not adopted by the district? What if any council size or composition approved by the district fails the triple majority test? What if Minister Clark imposes his view on our upper and subsequent lower tiers? All of these what if questions, we need to fully understand and accommodate what I would call Plan B in the evaluation of how does this ultimately help our objective of what I can simply say from our document is a better balance of cost apportionment across all district partners. So that, I think, is really one of our ultimate goals. I will also state today that for the most part, though, I'm going to listen. I assume that many of our district councillors will also listen, because this really is a listening session and an idea session. Please understand, if I do comment or I do question something, it's not necessarily reflective of my own personal opinion. More accurately, it's my way of probing and understanding what ultimately impacts that perspective or that decision to prepare for a better discussion around the district table. And that is ultimately what we need to achieve, is how are we going to set the table, so to speak, for our district discussion, and where do we go in that meeting? Understanding the wants, needs, and desires of Muskoka Lakes, because we will be going into a very difficult negotiation, if you will, to figure out where we net out. And we are partners with the District Muskoka, and we are partners with the other municipalities. And I think the simple goal is how do we all be treated equally as partners? So with that said, I'm going to try and move ourselves along here. We have a couple of delegations, and maybe we can let those into our meeting room, or like into the meeting, and then we will, we'll add Mr. Pearce first of all. I think he's probably been listening on. And, oh, there he is. Ken's in there and Laurie's in there. So Ken, I will turn the floor over to you. I'm not sure if you heard some of that preamble that I set the stage. And again, we're all trying to get a better handle on district council composition, where we go, where we can go, and how we ultimately get there. So Ken, over to you. Welcome.
Yes, can you see and hear me?
Oh, sorry, there we go. Go ahead.
Yes, can you see and hear me? Okay, Ken Pearce, Friends of Muskoka. Thank you for the update, Mayor, on where we stand. I think as people know, the deadline is now March 31, 2021 to get something done. I see this as an opportunity for you. As you know, the Mayor of Bracebridge prefers to maintain the status quo where the towns have a majority. And we see this manifested in a few ways with the way the seasonal residents, if they're going to be counted at 100%, how they're going to be counted, and the cell phone study, which we have a great deal of difficulty with. The preference for an unbalanced council, not 9-on-9 or 6-on-6 or whatever, and failing that, talking about weighted voting. The decision, I've heard it said that it's political, it's just political. With respect, I would say no. It's really, you have to look at Section 218, sub 10 of the Municipal Act. If the minister were to have to decide, he has to consider whatever factors he considers appropriate, including having regard to representation by population. But it's clearly not only representation by population. And so even if it were representation by population, I would contend that the seasonal residents actually form the majority of the population in the district. And so that's an important consideration as well. If you ignore municipal boundaries, and of course, Gravenhurst is about 50% seasonal and about 50% permanent. As I said in my submission, my written notes for this morning, it's the total population, not the electors, not based on financial contribution, but the total population. Unfortunately for us, we're faced with some very difficult nomenclature. We've got seasonal versus permanent, but you know, one day I was a seasonal resident, and a couple of years ago I retired, and now I'm a permanent resident in Muskoka. And I think there are other council members that are in the same boat. Rural versus urban. Well, look at Gravenhurst, and the municipal boundaries is all that separates that. Towns versus townships, and the seasonal issue as well. Waterfront versus non-waterfront. Well, you've got Muskoka Bay Club, you've got exceptions. So it's very complicated and complex, and it's difficult for us to explain. So we've used seasonal, probably not the best. If you include the permanent waterfront, maybe the seasonal goes from 85,000, maybe you add another 5 or 10,000, you end up at 95,000. And then you deduct that from the 60,000 permanent, you're down to 50,000. So it may be 2 to 1. But the suggestion is not that the seasonal should be a majority or that the townships should be a majority. It's just we're seeking fairness, and a balanced council, I think, would provide some fairness. And it's communities of interest that are important. Communities deserve a voice. Especially here where what we're talking about is really the majority. Our support would be for 18. I know 12 has been proposed, 15 different numbers. We have serious reservations about 12. I think it would require a significant restructuring of district council, the committee structure, et cetera, et cetera. It would also cause some issues at the lower tier municipalities and how to, you know, if you've only got 2 or whatever, how to deal with that. Weighted voting, I don't even think I need to say anything about it. It's just no support for it. Mr. Mayor, as you said, where do we go from here? If the triple majority test is not satisfied, the 3 townships don't approve, then technically the minister decides. There probably won't be further extensions. I mean, there could maybe be one more. I suppose one option would be to do nothing and leave the status quo, although I don't think that's satisfactory. The second would be to adopt what district council is proposing, but again, that's effectively been voted down if the triple majority test hasn't been satisfied. Then it becomes a question of, is it something that you want or you propose, and you would probably have to lobby the minister for that. And again, as I said, the test is not just rep by POC, which is not a problem when we say, you know, there's a lot of seasonal residents. but other things such as community of interest. And there again, it's a significant community that is in the township of Muskoka Lakes and throughout the district. The best route would probably be a compromise, either now or later. And I think the minister would listen to that if something else was put forward later on. Mr. Mayor, you've also said, where do we go from here, plan B? I've heard talk of secession. I've heard talk of downloading of services. I've heard a number of things. Those are all challenging because there's either provincial approval or triple majority tests for those things as well. But I think the first thing is to really focus on what you as a council want now, what you would want to put forward to the district. And I think it would be important to make your views known, that you talk amongst yourselves and come up with hopefully a consensus. And I don't know if that means passing a resolution like Georgian Bay did yesterday or what, but I think you need to give your district councillors some clear indication of your thinking on this. Those are my comments for this morning. Thank you. If there are any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Ken. Appreciate that. Council, any questions for Ken? Appreciate it. And I also appreciate the email that you sent us outlining. It's always appreciative to have the background information from a presentation that we can always rely back on. Yes,
thank you.
Okay. I see that. So thank you. And again, let me just say one of the things I do appreciate is getting more and more input. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's nonpartisan politics. So, you know, our district councillors obviously are independent, but certainly respect the views of the township of Muskoka Lakes and those people around here and our constituents. So I can see the nodding heads of my fellow district councillors, and every one of us certainly hears and accepts where we need to go, let me say. So thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to move on and let's go to Laurie. You're in the room. There you go. Welcome, Laurie. We'll just get you to unmute your microphone. Oh, Laurie, we'll get you. You're muted still.
There you go. Can you hear me?
We can. Welcome.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Mayor Harding. My name's Laurie Munro, and my address is 252 R60 POB 1JO. I'm a long-term cottager on Tobin Island, Lake Rosso, and today I'm speaking on behalf of both the MLA and the Friends of Muskoka. We have been following the district's municipal modernization process from inception and provided our detailed comments to you in our letter last Friday. We believe this is an exceptionally important initiative, as there will not be an opportunity to revisit the MM file for another 8 years. There are two distinct groups of residents in Muskoka, as Ken laid out. Those who live in town centers are largely permanent residents, and those who live outside the towns and are largely seasonal on the waterfront. The permanent residents number 60,000, and the seasonal waterfront residents number 81,000, or 57% of the district population. Our members and supporters include seasonal residents in TML, Gravenhurst, and Bracebridge, together with the lake associations in Georgian Bay, who support our position and whose council unanimously endorsed the principles in our letter yesterday. Our position, therefore, is supported by approximately 62,000 residents, or 77% of the seasonal resident base in the district. Here's the heart of our presentation today. We believe strongly that both groups deserve fair and equal representation, regardless of whether or where electoral boundaries happen to fall. We believe that embracing this concept will result in an improved governance model where the voices of both groups are heard at district council. We have 5 key positions on MM, and they are as follows. Firstly, equal weighting. For 50 years, seasonal residents have been counted at 50% a person for the purpose of district representation. That's a huge issue for seasonal residents. We believe district politicians are now in agreement on the need to fix this problem, but we would please ask that you ensure it is adopted as part of any package of revisions. Secondly, council composition and size. We think a smaller district council of 18 plus chair would be ideal, provided it is comprised of equal representation from each town and township. We are suggesting you consider 3 from each. That would allow for the mayor plus 2 district councillors from each lower tier. There is much discussion about a council size of 12. We would respectfully submit it is too small a council, and it would not allow for sufficient councillors to give a voice to both groups of residents or to staff the district committees. The move from 22 to 18 is also financially responsible, as it represents an 18% reduction. Please note, no other region in Ontario has reduced its council size in this modernization review, and the province does not require a reduction, according to a renowned council representation expert we have consulted. Thirdly, council voting rights. We believe that each of those 18 councillors should have an equal vote. No one councillor should have a greater say than another. Voting should be by majority. Ties should be resolved by political compromise. We do not support rep by pop weighted voting for 3 reasons. Firstly, it is unfair and divisive. Secondly, there is no regional government in the province that has adopted it. Only counties have adopted it, and they're a different political structure than regions. And thirdly, it perpetuates the 50-year control position that towns have had over townships. Now, why would the towns buy into this approach and include other considerations? The answer is grounded in the notions of fairness and effective representation. Effective representation is a legal concept supported by both the Supreme Court of Canada and OMB/LPAT. Former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada, Beverly McLaughlin, wrote that key communities of interest, and I quote, must have a voice. Seasonal waterfront residents at 81,000 strong are a key community of interest that needs a voice. Said another way, you do not get effective representation when the majority is treated as a minority. Please note the communities of Waterloo, Peel, York, and Durham, to name but a few, have all adopted this representation philosophy. The complete discretion to do so currently resides with District Council. Item 4, councillor compensation. We think councillor compensation should be reviewed as part of the MM process. The work councillors do is important, and they should be properly compensated. Item number 5, the Environics phone study. There are material deficiencies in the cell phone study undertaken to estimate the number of seasonal residents in the district. The work was rushed, and even district staff has acknowledged 5 significant deficiencies with the study. As for an example, non-Canadians were wrongly excluded, and the town count appears to be somewhat inflated. As such, we believe the Environics study should not be used to help count residents until it has been further validated. Now, having said this, if each lower tier has the same number of seats on district council, the counting of seasonal residents becomes much less important. So what is our ask today? Firstly, we are asking you to support equal representation of towns and townships on district council. Secondly, when the district MM proposal package comes to you, please consider working with the 2 other townships to forward a common position, not 3 individual ones. We believe township unity will be very, very important. Lastly, should any MM reform initiatives come into the TML Council that include unequal seat allocations or unequal voting rights, we would ask that you push back. It is high time for all Muskoka residents to be treated fairly and equally. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I yield back the floor.
Thank you very much, Laurie. Appreciate your comments, and also obviously MLA and Friends of Muskoka chiming in as you do. I see Councillor Jagowitz has his hand up. Frank, you have a question?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you. It's for Mr. Munro. Laurie, I'm looking at your title here, and I read it as Chair of the Joint MLA FOM District Representation Committee. And I'm wondering if that's a new committee for your organization, and maybe you could elaborate on why it was formed and how it's made up.
I'd be happy to, Frank. When the MM initiative was announced and the district engaged on it, we viewed it as a very, very important file. And the MLA and the FOM folks came together, and we jointly decided to create a joint committee that would basically shadow the work of the district MM committee and engage. So this is not a committee that's going to last forever. It's an ad hoc committee. I drew the short straw, and here I am today. So we meet about every 2 weeks on average, and this position that I've articulated is the position of the joint group.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else know that the blue hand is gone? It's been replaced by a gold hand. I just noticed in Councillor Zavitz. Maybe it's just me. I don't know what Zoom is up.
Thank you. Mine's blue. And through Chair, to Mr. Munro, if I might, just for context. So you seem to be great with numbers. So 62,000 local people that you represent. I'm going to use that term so loosely. Local people, people that are here, people that own property, people that are taxpayers, which represents about 77%. You said, could you extrapolate that? You seem to be good with numbers. Could you share with us the larger number about the potentiality of the whole district, people that aren't members of your association?
Well, first off, let's start with full-time residents, permanent residents are 60,000. Seasonal residents are 81,000. So the seasonal outnumber full-time by about 21,000, and seasonal are 57% of the total population. So when you take all of the cottage associations that we are aligned with and currently working with in the background, Friends of Muskoka members, MLA members, Georgian Bay Association members who've endorsed our position, and 6 Mile Lake and other lake associations that have indicated a willingness to endorse our position, we get up to a very substantial number of the seasonal residents. You know, it's not a surprise that seasonal residents tend to view things through the same lens. And that lens is something that we're trying to represent here today, and hopefully successfully.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Wait a second, I've just got a thing open. Okay, I think we're good. Laurie, appreciate that very much. And
Thank you.
Again, all great information for our council for phase 2 of this, and also though for our district councillors, as we will enter into this a little bit ahead of time. So, okay, council, let's kind of take a bit of a dive into some of the background. And the presentation that was given to people took us through the whole process, talked about district council composition, but then talked about some ultimate down at what Muskoka Lakes might look like. Should we make a change down to 12? And I don't really want to focus at all on the council down to Muskoka Lakes at this particular point, because we really need to have that first discussion and decision what's going to happen at the district. And I will also point out there's 2 phases in my mind that is certainly going to be pushed on this. Number 1 is figuring out the composition review at the district. And I've had numerous conversations with other modernization committee members, as well as the district chair. But the real meat and potatoes, and I think it solves a lot of people's problem, is what I'll call phase 2 of this modernization. And that is a program service review and rationalization. So looking at all the costs, looking at all the services the district offers, and making sure that it is appropriate per municipality. I'll make a comment that Georgian Bay Township, or Huntsville for that matter, or Lake of Bays, gets 0 value from the locks in Port Carling, and yet they contribute towards some of those costs associated. So we really need to understand all of the services the district offers. And I will, Councillor Edwards will remember, Councillor Hedy's potentially in Nishikawa, but about 10 years ago now, we went through a full modernization, if you will, of our solid waste. And they reapportioned the costs, trying to do a base admin and then a user system. What you use, you pay for. Lake of Bays still remains the lowest cost because they have all transfer stations. There is no curbside pickup in Lake of Bays. So that kind of a methodology for many of our services, which I call sort of this phase 2 of this, will, I think, get us to answer many of our questions or some of our issues that have resolved around this district table and our price value relationship issues. The one thing that I do know is we have all worked this term of council in particular, and I respect and I thank my fellow district councillors, because we have worked closer and a better working relationship with our fellows at the district. And we are partners. This is truly a partnership as we move forward. So ultimately, we're going to try and get to the finish line in these two phases, whatever the number, if it's 22 councillors, if it's 18 councillors, if it's 15 councillors. How do we get to, because I think our ultimate bigger question is how do we get to phase 2 and try and get a little bit of cost apportionment, a better cost apportionment. Councillor Zavich, you have a question?
Thank you. Through you and to you, more of a statement than a question. So I hear what you're saying. I do, though, think that phase 2, part 2, whatever we want to call reset 2.0 is it's clutter right now. I haven't seen in all the everything that I've experienced watching the 6 of you, the modernization committee at the district on YouTube, everything that I've seen, you aren't sitting around talking about who buys more snowplows, who gets better services, who pays too much. To me, we definitely need to talk about this. We've been talking about this for 2 years. But the point is, right now, here and now, I think we should be really narrowing our focus, narrowing the sphere of our discussions today. We very simply want to send a message to the district about what the Township of Muskoka Lakes Council sees on this, if you will, this initialness, if that's even a word, of where that committee, your committee has come. I think we can today settle on a way forward. And I don't think it has anything to do with whether I believe our garbage pickup is good or bad or how much we pay, because I'm very strong on that. But right now, today, I don't think that's on the table. I think what's on the table is a very clear, honest, open, easy 5 or 6 points. We've heard the delegates speak to it. This should be a no-brainer. This should not be cluttered and confused and bedazzled with all kinds of facts, figures, and information about how the Township of Muskoka Lakes isn't getting a good deal from the township or the district. I don't believe that's on the table here today. It will be, and we will be having that discussion. I know it, but we won't be. I don't think we should be having it today. And I think that some of the questions that you posed, that was posed to us on the questionnaire, it's why I did not respond to the questionnaire at all, because I think the answers actually are what we're tripping on, isn't it? The questions are easy. And so you just throw a bunch of them down there. Should the Township of Muskoka Lakes be separate from the district? Well, who asked that question? Well, that's got nothing to do with the 6 of you and John Klink sitting around talking about for 2 years where this thing should go. And I think we should land it. Part 1, all look at each other, be comfortable with it, and then let's see what part 2 brings. I don't think we can presuppose what part 2 and part 3 are going to look like. Thank you.
Okay, I saw Councillor Kelly's hand up, then I'm going to go to Councillor Jagowitz, then Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you, and through you, I don't have an electronic hand. Hey, maybe it just popped up. No, I don't have an electronic hand, so I'll wave. I'm going to follow on Councillor Zavitz with a similar comment. I think we have a lot to discuss, and a full, complete, and frank discussion about council composition at district is number 1. The other issues are probably as important, but we got a lot to accomplish if we're going to get what we think we need to get accomplished before the middle of March, when this needs to be completed. I think the issue of services, downloading of services, I suppose the possibility, since it was raised in the questionnaire, the possibility of going alone is something that we need always be mindful of and considerate of, but not on a short-term timeline. I think our time right now is best spent focusing on the specific issues of district council composition.
I couldn't agree more. And if you guys missed that in my opening remarks, that's what we're going to be discussing today. I just want to be cognizant that ultimately at the end of the day, whatever we get to, that is going to be phase 2 of a discussion, and it can't be forgotten. We oftentimes, I think, try to solve phase 2 problems in phase 1. But Councillor Jagowitz and Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I disagree with the last 2 councillors. I believe that whoever put together this questionnaire did it correctly. It was thoughtful. It put on the table the issues that we all know exist. I do agree with the last two speakers on the one part that I think we can deal with council composition. I think we should. I don't think we should let the other issues clutter that, okay? But I don't think those other issues should be pushed aside either. Because if we look around us, all municipalities to the north of us have a different system. They have individual municipalities that look after their residents. They do not have an upper tier. They have a district social services administration board to handle the provincially downloaded and mandated things. And therefore the representation that those municipalities have on those district social service boards is not as important because they're not dealing with important planning matters and roads and things that people really care about. So we need to have one eye to what we're going to do in phase 2. And if in fact in phase 2, we can rationalize our services, for example, bring planning together in one place, bring roads together in one place, we can significantly reduce the role of the district. And that means we can have significantly fewer representatives, okay? Now, I'm aware that these things aren't going to be done easily or quickly, okay? So I think we should have an eye to it. And I think that the number 12 that has been raised, I think would be appropriate if the district's role was significantly reduced. And as I have suggested, that certain functions be pushed to the lower tiers. But if that's not going to occur, and it's not likely to occur right now, then I agree with the number 18. And that's why I think we have to discuss those. And I think our statement back to the district would be, you want 12, and we can see 12, but only if your role is reduced. And then if we did download some things, district council could be made up of 2 committees, one to look after services and one to look after community and social things. And then 12 would be appropriate. So Mr. Mayor, I don't think we should skip over those parts, those questions. Some of us put a lot of time and effort into thinking about those, but I also agree with the 2 councillors that just spoke that number 1 priority today should be to have a consensus position on council composition, but we should not lose sight of those other matters. And I think as one speaker said, one of our delegates, this is our once in an 8-year chance at this. Let's not put the other important issues to a phase that'll never happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nishikawa. Hang on, you're still on mute, Ruth. I don't know if, can we remove her mute? Hang on a sec, we'll try and do that on your behalf. And then I see Councillor Bridgman is in the queue as well. I'm not sure.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, sorry, because it didn't allow me to do it. Thank you. I have the same, somewhat of the same concerns that Frank had raised. I think it's important, or from discussions that I've had with other councillors, I feel that there is a lack of understanding, in fact, of district's role throughout the township of Muskoka Lakes. And why I say that is that it's more than public works, but it's much less from a community services perspective than I believe we have a full understanding. I don't want to pass this issue off. I do believe we have to get back to, the larger issue, the number of councillors, that sort of thing. But I don't want to repeat a lot of the things that have been said. Initially, I was going to, but I do think that we have to spend some time on, with this particular council, understanding the services then and the benefits that we receive from those services at district.
Councillor Bridgman.
Let's see if I can.
Thank you, Mayor Harding. I believe that that is in our strategic plan to review the financial part of our relationship with the district. And I agree with Councillor Nishikawa. We need to really understand that. And I also support Councillor Jagowitz' thoughts of downloading some of those functions like planning. But I think that is step 2. So I think we're just right now, if we're talking about composition, I couldn't help thinking when I was listening to the delegations that here we are with seasonal and permanent. And there's more to our community than that. So I would want 18, I would support 18 councillors, because then we have 3 from each area. And we may well end up with somebody who is a seasonal district representative, but we need other people from our permanent population that's rural, that's disadvantaged, whatever, to also be able to go there. So I wouldn't want to take the chance that we just have one district rep trying to do all of those functions. So I think 18 with equal representation is the best that we can do.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to back up a little bit before we actually pick a number, if we pick a number. And I don't disagree with 18. I agree with Councillor Jagowitz. 12 potentially may become cumbersome, and there's lots of modifications, if you will, that would have to happen at the district from a committee structure perspective and a workload at the end of the day. But everyone did, and I do appreciate many people did talk about the objective specifically, and I just want to try and keep us focused. And our first objective, what do we want to achieve through this modernization? And ultimately, for those people who have the document in front of you, I really like the first comment, and I'll just put it out there for a little bit of debate, and that is to have a structure which reflects equality for the varied interests sitting at the table. And I think everybody, whether you are in Huntsville or Gravenhurst or Lake of Bays or wherever you are, that would be a great opportunity and a great objective for all of this modernization committee. Anybody want to chime in? We have some other better values, fair, equitable. There was a comment somebody made that said at its inception, Muskoka did not have any input into the number of councillors. And I don't know where that came from, because I don't think any of us were sitting around the table 50 years ago. I didn't read that data, so I'm not sure where that came from. And maybe somebody wants to elaborate on that. But because if there was an amalgamation of many of lower tiers and to create and form the Township Muskoka Lakes, which at the same time form the upper tier as well. But anybody want to comment on sort of that first objective? Is there anything different? I see Councillor Kelly, his hand is up, but his video is off.
And the video's off?
It is.
Oh,
There you're back.
I didn't know that. Okay. Sorry about that. And through you, I suppose, listen, I was very pleasantly surprised by the quality of the feedback through the questionnaire. In all honesty, I was. I think there's room for a lot of debate, a lot of discussion here. I honestly, my take on this is we're past the 0 hour. We're at the point where we need to actually get sharp pencils out and figure out what works and be specific and write it down on a piece of paper and adopt it as our mission or vision and carry forward with it. I think that to have a structure which reflects equality for varied interests, there's 6 months of discussion there on what varied interests are and how that structure would accommodate it. So while I think that's an honorable cause, I have no idea what to do with that idea, with that notion, other than be mindful that when we start writing numbers down, somebody is going to check to make sure that varied interests, whatever that is, whatever that means, are protected and covered off in a structure that reflects equality, again, whatever that means. So we need to have the debate. We're going to be here until Thursday if we're going to discuss line by line non-specific kind of generic wishes that are reflected in the questionnaire answers. That's it.
Okay, thank you for that. From a strategic perspective, and understand that I spent 20 years of my life in strategic planning and marketing. If we don't actually have an objective that we're trying to achieve, then is 12 councillors right? Is 18 councillors right? Is weighted voting right? And it's going to get us all, and also I think help our district councillors get to the finish line with some kind of a focus. And you know, if the words are equality and varied interests, then some of the decisions, again, if it be a weighted voting that can outvote, I want to put something just in Muskoka Lakes and we get more votes, and by the way, everybody else has to pay for it. That is not equality with the varied interests. So that's the check and balance that gets us to the appropriate system, as opposed to, and Councillor Kelly, you and I had this conversation yesterday. There's no statistics, there's no data, there's no background that says 12, 18, 16, 15 is the right number. Every regional council we see has a variety of different numbers, from 10 down in Oxford County up to 20 some odd. I don't have the number in front of me, but significant numbers of people, or 30. So I don't think there's a right answer, but we need to try and focus our discussions to get a check and balance saying that this decision fits under that objective or it doesn't. Councillor Jagowitz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, I thank the person who put together this questionnaire, and I think the first question is one that we should spend a little time on. And you'll see that first question has two parts, A and B. And it talks about the what this committee at the district is doing. And it has two objectives. One is modernization, and the second, B, is the council composition review. And that's what you're all discussing. So I'd like to just talk about A for a second, if I might, and just to share some thoughts with you. If we look, I was involved in the 70s when regional government was created in the Waterloo area, and regional governments were formed to facilitate growth in the southern part of our province. Toronto and other places were running out of expansion room, and places like Cambridge and Preston and Hespeler and Galt were resisting sprawl. So they took those areas and formed a region, a district, whatever you want to call it, an upper tier, and collected all these together, and so that growth was forced upon those areas or allowed to occur, okay? And they came up north with that concept. And when they got to us, they stopped. And everything north of us, and I mean everything north of us is organized into 11 districts. And they're called districts, but they're not two-tier governments. They're all single tier. Parry Sound has 7 members, Thunder Bay has so many members, and so on. And they all operate and handle their own planning, their own roads, their own services. Then the province decided to download things, okay? And so they said, aha, regional governments are great, two-tier. So, and let's take roads, for example. Did you ever wonder why 632 is a provincial highway and not a district one? And that's because they downloaded the provincial highways to the District of Muskoka, but when they came to Parry Sound, there was no district, so they couldn't download it. Well, when they decided they wanted to download other services, they created, and many of you may not be aware, but there's another act other than a municipal act. It's called the District Social Services Administration Board Act. And through that act, they created 11 district social services boards in the north. And there's one for Parry Sound. And it handles Ontario Works, long-term care, paramedics, children's family services, the social services that are downloaded. Now, you say, well, why is that important? Well, it's important because that board is there. But for example, when hospitals need funding, the hospitals can't go to that board and say, I want to talk to you and the municipalities. They have to go direct to the municipalities. So in those areas, there's no duplication. That board handles certain things, the municipalities handle others. Now let's look at our district. We're not growing. We're growing in assessment, but we're not really growing in population. The regional form of government that we have is really not appropriate for what we have. And I think it's important that we not lose sight of that. I know I'm taking a long time on it because I believe this is the last time I'll get a chance to speak on this issue, because I do agree with those that say, okay, let's leave that for another day, okay? And let's go forward with 18 and equal and so on. And I support that. But then let's put in motion some way of dealing with these other issues that are in the questionnaire. And possibly we should be doing what the MLA have done. Possibly we should be forming some form of committee to work with the district on trying to move those objectives forward over time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're still kind of just trying to focus ourselves on a specific objective, and appreciate the fact that we want to jump to 18 or whatever. Humor me, if we will, a little bit as we work our way through the package. And Councillor Jaglas, to your perspective, you're welcome. It was myself who put the package together, so I will leave it at that. You know, again, do people disagree vastly from an objective as we work our way forward to find a structure that reflects equality for the varied interests sitting around the table? I see Councillor Zavitz has your hand up. I'll just go to you quickly, but I want to put that question on the floor.
Thank you, and through you to you. I don't believe this is marketing 101. I do not believe this is a marketing exercise where one needs to understand the problem before we attempt to create a solution. Our objective is very clear. There's actually a mandate in front of us that says January the 18th, your group is getting together again, you 7, and you're going to try to move this thing forward. What we want to do today is give you input from this township, from this council, that you can take, put in your shirt pocket and pull out on the 18th and say, this is what the council of the township of Muskoka Lakes feels on this topic. It's very simple. That's the objective that I would see. If there's any other objectives, if it's to separate from the district, if it's to have social services here, if it's to have washrooms and public utility, you know, whatever it is, that's not what this is today. As far as I'm concerned today, our objective is right in front of us. And it is what we give to you to take away, to take to the 18th. Am I wrong? I would ask my other councillors that. Thank you.
So I will suggest, Councillor Zavitz, that ultimately the purpose of today is to have a better, more fulsome discussion so that our district councillors have an idea of where we need to go. This council, in 2 weeks, once district council makes a decision, will have an opportunity to voice this district council's perspective, at which point district council will pass a resolution that states and puts our claim in the ground. What I'm asking for today is for input to make sure and to help guide myself, if you will, as an objective, because I always have to look at, this is what I want to achieve, and does a council of 18 with weighted voting achieve that, or does it not, as opposed to just, this is what I want to see. So I please respect that I need to have, as chair of or mayor of Muskoka Lakes, and also as a committee member on the modernization committee, I need some background, I need some structure, because I need to be able to argue and debate at times why a council of 12 or 14 is appropriate or not appropriate, and I need a strategic direction to do so. So I'm going to go to Councillor Bridgman.
Okay, so I'm having a little bit of trouble following some of these lines, but I think what you're asking for, Mayor Harding, and I will say to you, if you're looking for guidance, I think 18 is the number, and I think I explained that before. We need 3 people from each lower tier to make sure that all of those interests are looked after at the district level. And in terms of our objective, my objective would be that we have equal representation and no weighted voting from each lower tier municipality. So I don't think I can get more explicit than that in terms of what my direction would be for you going forward. So I think that's what you were asking. It was a little hard to understand.
Okay, so again, I apologize if I'm not clear, but at the end of the day, Councillor Kelly brought it to me yesterday, and I would agree with it. What is the rationalization for 18 or weighted voting or non-weighted voting? And until I understand what it is that we're actually all trying to achieve, I can't hold up a yardstick or benchmark to see whether or not we're achieving that. And that was my comment of, if we are looking for a structure, whatever that is, weighted voting, non-voting, that reflects equality, also respecting varied interests, which again can be seasonal, permanent, all of those kinds of things. So if we can potentially agree on that, then we can engineer and get to a strategic position that becomes defendable at the district versus I just want 18 and here's why I want weighted voting or non-weighted voting. So Councillor Bridgman, supplemental, and then I'll go on.
I'm just going to probably repeat my reasoning for 18 is that with 3 district councillors from each area, your odds are much higher of representing the interests within your own area, not just waterfront. So that's my reasoning for 18. And then the other reasoning is that I would look at the district as a whole in terms of, quote, population and just say everybody should have the same vote in terms of the lower tier coming to the district level.
Okay.
Sort of like the Senate.
You are supporting the comment of equality, and then the result is 18. I'm just trying to make sure that we are comfortable with equality, because it may be inequality that we want to have, or we may just want better financial resources, or we may want something different. And that's all I'm trying to ask specifically so that we can move forward. I'll go to Councillor Edwards next.
Thank you very much. I agree with Councillor Bridgman on this. We've heard and that two delegates today from the ratepayers, the taxpayers, and they're saying 18, and they want equality. It's as simple as that. If we do have the fortitude to say what George and Bay did the other day, send a resolution that the township want 18 and equal representation, 3 from each municipality, then we can work out all the other afterwards. But I think that's the stand we have to make, because it didn't get very far with that 12 at the district and that. And I think this is the way. And we can work out the other and I think we should have a resolution today and bring it forward to council tomorrow so that district know what the township want. No, not what the four district councillors want, the township. And that is it right at this moment. And I would support that 100%. And then we can work out all the other afterwards. And you know, it's funny, there's 18 different and that duties that the district and that look at. And that, so it works out for 18. You've got ambulance, you've got airports, you've got drinking water, water management, recycling, wastewater, long-term care, social assistance and housing, attainable housing, social and human services. You've got police, you've got the court, you've got natural resources, parks, roads and bridges, and that parkland use, emergency and economic development. To download all that to 12 people is too much. And that, in my view, and I will support what the ratepayers are saying. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Hayes and then Councillor Roberts, who we haven't heard from first.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to agree with Barb and Alan as well. I started working at the district in 1974, and I can tell you the major complaint, I never heard the councillors complain that there was too much work. I never heard the councillors complain that there wasn't enough work. What I did hear a lot was complaints about inequality between voting. And I think we've given 50 years of this a try. If we have a review in 8 years, let's give 8 years of equal voting to each lower tier a try. And I'll agree with Frank that during that 8 years, we can look at phase 2. And if we can download enough of district functions back to the lower tiers, maybe at that time we can look at going to 12. But right now, with the workload staying the same, I think we have to remain at 18. So that's what I would support.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I want to support what has just gone ahead of me, Nelda and Alan and Barb, Glenn and Frank about the 18. But I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the ball, because Alan, you just went through a whole list, our questionnaire does, of other issues that we need to address and we need to talk about. So I think that we should immediately start up something within the township to start putting information or data behind this and support, so we can work with the district for that second phase, as you referred to, Mayor, the review of all the services that are provided by the district. Because I think governments is both the elected people and governments is the staff, senior positions. And so that's what I'd like to say on this point. So 18, I support 18. I think we should have a resolution tomorrow to go forward with that.
Okay, I'm going to go to, let's go to Councillor Zavitz, then Ishikawa. Glenn, you're muted.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, I certainly and wholeheartedly support the speakers that we've just heard, our fellow councillors. And I must say to you, Mayor, as for clarity, what you seem to be seeking on your sheet there, I would completely and wholeheartedly support the position paper, if you will, from the MLA and the Friends of Muskoka, as did Georgian Bay yesterday. I picked up the phone, I called the mayor of Georgian Bay yesterday and had a wonderful discussion with him. And interestingly enough, they spent no more than 40 minutes on this topic and voted unanimously to support that and create a motion. So interestingly enough, you know, I think where we are, I totally support, if you want to know where Glenn Zavitz stands, you can read what Ken Pearce and Laurie Munro just said. Wholeheartedly, I do support the others, councillors, that we should create a resolution. And if we need to do that today, we should do it today. We should move it today. We need to send a message to the district, Phil, with you, you, Mayor, that on the 18th, here's what the Township Muskoka Lakes thinks on this issue. And that's where I think we should stand. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ishikawa.
Thank you. It's been a little bit confusing because of the various opinions, mostly saying the same thing but differently. And so I just go back to the dollars. And essentially, some of this started for me when we have been asked to, I'll just use, for instance, our long-term care home and the percentage of money that would have to be paid for because of the way that the system is set up right now. So for instance, whatever number you want to use, let's just say 32%, whereas more affected areas would reap much more benefit. So I'm coming back down to the dollars. And in fact, so we're talking about whatever number, 18, 12, do we know what that looks like as to, just because there's voting members, do we actually know how the request for funds is going to come from the municipality? That's not very clear to me. And I'm sure that Frank has the answers, and I'm hoping he does, because I rely on him for that sort of thing. But that's what I really want to see is, I mean, I'm very familiar of what the district, the benefits that our municipality gains from the district. But I do want to, when moving forward, I want to have a fairer understanding of what the Township of Muskoka Lakes will pay for moving forward. Whether there's equal voting or not is kind of a different conversation. Does that mean that everybody pays the same is kind of what I'm getting down to.
And Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. And through you, and I'm not going to repeat, but I can tell you that I'm on the same page as pretty much every councillor who's gone before me in the last few minutes. But I do want to address one issue, and that's your comment, Your Worship, that you and I had a conversation yesterday. And I want to bring it out because, quite frankly, I think it's the reason we're having this conversation today. As you recall, I called you asking where I might find the rationale and the backup material and the analysis and the study and the commentary to support the recommendation that came from the district's composition review committee that council be reduced to 12. My initial reaction is that's an extraordinary jump. After 52 years with 23 to suddenly pull it down to 12. I assumed, obviously incorrectly, that somebody had done some work on that number, that somebody had some analysis on, P&L impact or on cost takeouts. Somebody had done some impact on work loading. Somebody had done some impact on how the hell are we going to cover all the work that 23 people used to do with 12 people, and how in the process of accomplishing that with the reduced size, are we going to also serve our constituents in our lower tier municipalities. We're going to have people dragged further and further into district responsibility, just sheer dictate that. And that means they're going to be further and further away from the local municipality. I assumed, not only assumed, it's beyond an assumption. It's incomprehensible to me that committee could have come up with a number like 12 without having done that work. And my question to you is as simple as, where would I find that work? To this point, I haven't found it. To this point, you can't steer me to it. I suspect there isn't any work done on it. And so we have to debate this issue and pull a number out of thin air that says 12 or 18 or 29 or 274 is the right number, but we don't have the resources or the capacity to do that analysis. We can't look at our own studies and make our own assumptions and make our own cost takeout assumptions. And I don't even know what frankly, what the goal is. It clearly isn't a cost takeout because the cost takeout is meaningless. So I think we need to focus on what we can control and what we can understand. My comment to you yesterday, and I stand by it today, is we should be taking a very firm and very specific understanding. The work of the Composition Review Committee leaves me with no choice but to be specific. If they're going to specialize in vague, I'm going to specialize in specific. And so at the end of the day, the fact that we will be, as a council, I hope, not expect, but I hope we will be formalizing a very specific set of guidelines as to how we want this to roll out. And it will bear the weight, I hope, of the council through the form of a resolution. This notion that we can pull numbers out of thin air and make them make sense later is a little like answering the question, coming up with an answer before you've heard the question. It's exceedingly frustrating to me that there's any expectation that we add value to this conversation when the people who I think were charged with the responsibility of coming up with the initial idea in the first place didn't have anything more substantial or meaty to offer up to people to justify the 12 that they arrived at. I might suggest that we work at 18 right now with a review down the road in 4 years. And I realize that the review is obligated every year. There's no reason to believe we can't do our own review after 4. Take a look at whether the workloading is an issue, whether the cost takeouts are actually realized, whether there's an opportunity to download to the local community, the local, township municipality, lower tier municipality. Let's watch it for 4 years and understand whether maybe 12 is the right number. But I certainly have no basis. And I can tell you, as somebody who in my previous life ran a business, if one of my branch managers said, after 50 years of running something with 23 employees, I now can do it with 12, but I have nothing to show you, they wouldn't be working for me any longer. That's it. Thank you.
So thank you. And I want to provide a little bit of context to where I think, and again, there's not a rationale that the perfect council size is X, X, or X. Provided in everyone's slide deck was a context for other regional governments and how many people they represent. And then also at the same time, how many members represent them. And there's a wide array of councillors, if you will, per constituent. So at one extreme is the District of Muskoka, where call it 140,000 people in round numbers. We have 23 people, which is roughly one councillor for every 6,000 people. The flip side of that is Peel Region, that has one councillor for every 55,000 people. If we are to go to 2018, each councillor represents 7,700 people. If you got to 12, you're just over 11,000 people. The next closest would be the County of Oxford, which is also 10 people representing roughly 11,000 people. So at the end of the day, I think the reason or rationale is in all regional government, Muskoka Lakes theoretically would be far overrepresented versus any other regional government. So just factor that in. And again, we can have our own beliefs. We can shoot a cannon across the bow and make comment and recommendations, but it also has to pass a triple majority. And if it doesn't, we also need to think about what the minister may impose. And if the minister is to look at all other regional governments, where we may or we may not fall. So that factors into everyone's decision-making. And again, I don't disagree, I'll tell you right now, with the concept of 18 people. But I need more justification versus a township resolution, or we like it. I need some financial justification. I need some business case justification, to Councillor Kelly's perspective, that gets us to that 18 and why it becomes a good decision for all of District Council and why we're in this position. So I'm going to keep working my way through the list, Councillor Jaglowitz, and then I see Councillor Kelly back on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I make my comments, I just want to say, yes, I'm in favor of the 18. I think we have a consensus on that. I'd like to just follow on your comments about the district gave you those numbers, Mr. Mayor, and what they've done is they've looked at all the municipalities to the south of it. They haven't looked at any municipalities to the north of us where we probably identify more with. So those are difficult numbers. But let me address the elephant in the room, okay? We've now talked, we're settling on 18, and it doesn't matter whether it's 18 or 2 or 12 or whatever it is. The elephant in the room is still that the towns want voting control on the major issues, okay? And that's the weighted voting. So don't lose sight of that. And Mr. Mayor, you're asking for how you're to handle this at a modernization committee. I believe that's going to be your biggest struggle. Whether it's 18 or 12, it'll be accepted if there's some form of weighted voting that keeps the edge with the towns. So I think our statement here has to be very clear. To talk about what Councillor Kelly is saying, I don't think it's as important whether we pick on 18 or 12, but let's go with 18. But it should be very clear that it has to be equal for each municipality, and there can be no weighted voting. That's and I think that I believe that's going to be your struggle, sir.
Okay. Councillor Mazan, then I'll go to Councillor Kelly and Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you. I've had the luxury of listening, and I'm going to do my best not to repeat because there's been many good comments, but I wanted to go back to your initial ask, Mayor Harding, which is around the objective. You know, we could wordsmith it slightly, but yes, I do agree that to reflect equality of varied interests does capture the essence of what I think we're trying to accomplish here, which is to resolve the inequity. And I believe it was Councillor Hayes who said, from her experience, that's the number one thing is the inequality in the decision making. So the next part to that, I think a lot of what we're talking about is how to go about doing that. So I keep coming back to, you know, what you're tasked with. And I would say as district councillors, you've identified in our process map here that step one is that district council will need to agree to a change in the size and composition of council and potentially weighted voting. So I think that that's the task ahead of us. But I like what Councillor Jaglowicz's approach was in the phase two, or I think it was you, Mayor Harding, who brought that up. I do not want to lose sight of that. I think these things go hand in hand, and they need to be done almost in simultaneous processes. So coming back to then the task at hand, district council size, composition, and the potential of weighted voting, which is what Councillor Jagłowicz just brought up. I'm looking at a staff report, and it does say here, based on a review of the table above, staff would propose an 18-member council. So, you know, one thing I've learned in my time on council has been to listen to staff. So this is district council, my apologies, not township council. I think I need to make sure that's clear. So, you know, like everybody else around the table, it feels like 18 is the right approach. The second thing, as far as composition, to achieve the goal of equality, it would seem that if every municipality has the same amount of votes, then that is also a positive, and I would support that. And the final thing about weighted voting, similar to what Councillor Kelly was saying, that the rationale for 12, that was the first question I had asked you, Mayor Harding, a while ago too. In the absence of seeing it, it makes it very difficult. I would say the same thing as with weighted voting. I know that they've listed out, this is again, as district staff, the positives and the negatives of weighted voting. I have not seen any rationale to support weighted voting as a positive for the township of Muskoka Lakes, and that's what job I have, is to represent our constituents here. So I would also not support weighted voting. Thank you.
Councillor Mazan, if I may, can you direct me to that staff report? Because that's very key. I have not seen a staff report. I don't remember seeing a staff report that recommended 18. Can you give me a date and time of that staff report, or who issued it? You're on mute.
Thank you. So the one I'm looking at, and I'm hopeful that I'm not misreading information. I haven't had the same luxury as a lot of you sitting around the table, but the one I'm looking at was the council composition review from December 4th. And so it has walked us through a lot of the discussions that we are talking about. And I get to page 5, and it has laid out by our municipalities total population, percentage of population, and size of council. You know, so they have mapped this out for us. I think the added part to this has been, then if they took it as a true, this is how I'm reading it, as a true, you would need 10 out of 18 to win the vote. And this would be the rep by pop, I think, so that the township would actually have more votes. And then that's when the discussion around weighted voting comes in. So what I'm offering up is somehow district staff has come up with some rationale or recommendation on 18-member. I guess I'm asking our district council to go back and make sure that I'm reading this correctly. And I think we need to listen to our staff at some point and their recommendations. So
Councillor Mazan, I agree 100%. That's why I'm at a bit of a loss. I know there was, if we went to 18, if we went to 12, here's what council would look like.
okay.
Clerk's pulling that right now where it says staff recommend a council of 18.
Okay, so it's on page 5 of this staff report. Now there's nuances, and the weighted voting is the nuance here. But on page 5, it says underneath table number 3, size of council based on total pop. Based on a review of the table above, staff would propose that an 18-member council may be the most advantageous for the following reasons. There is no manual rounding, which results in the closest alignment to rep by pop. That's what we just talked about. All municipalities have a minimum of 2 councillors, which was discussed during the last meeting. And then there is a reduction in the size of council, however, not as significant as was previously considered.
Yep, no, I mean, thank you.
You're welcome.
That is awesome information. Thank you. And I'm not sure why our meeting got hijacked on the 4th of that. So one of the reasons that I appreciate this is that we have 9 other sets of eyes looking at this, plus all of our other ratepayers. You know, and what this does is provide, again, not just, I want this for Muskoka Lakes. And that's what I'm really trying to work hard to get off of. That's why I'm asking from a strategy perspective and an objective perspective, that hopefully we can have our fellow district councillors buy into the same. So it's not just a I want or I like. There's justification. This has justification. Staff have recommended. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Councillor Kelly? Oh,
sorry,
Councillor.
may I just have a supplemental on that, because I found this to be a well-written document, at least because it also added some context on the weighted voting piece. But similar to what Councillor Kelly was saying about the rationale for 12, I'm not feeling that there's a solid rationale for weighted voting in the township as a benefit. I personally, now this brings it to a personal level, would find it difficult. I'm looking at my screen right now and I have Gord Roberts beside me, but if I knew that Gord Roberts beside me has 2 votes and I'm always 1, psychologically, as a councillor, your voice does not seem nearly as impactful. So that's a personal view or lens on that concept of weighted voting. But beyond that, they have actually laid out in this document the pros and cons of weighted voting.
So thank you. I'm just further reviewing this document, and just so that we're all clear, when staff recommended the 18-member council, the townships in this particular case only got 8 votes. The towns got 10 votes. So it doesn't achieve in our objective that perspective. So, and that's probably why I discounted that comment, because the 18 as they recommended.
And sorry, I apologize for yet another supplemental. And I did note that when I was reading this document, it would still mean that we would need, I would say, the towns versus township. And I really do not like that divide. I recognize it's very real, but I don't think it's helpful for us to be looking at how to constructively move forward. All said, there still is an imbalance and an inequality, which is what we are ultimately trying to resolve here. So we would still need 10 out of 18 to win a vote in this model. I, again, just wanted to support, though, the concept of a number. 18 seems to be something that staff had their head wrapped around. But the second part to this is then how does one make sure that that becomes an equal voice? And the other element into this is the weighted voting. And Councillor Jaglowitz brought that up as the other elephant in the room here. I do not see supporting evidence as a councillor in the township of Muskoka Lakes. I am not a district councillor, and I am tasked with representing what's in the best interest of us at the township. I have not been convinced or seen rationale that would support the concept of weighted voting. So I just wanted to be sure that was clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly?
I thank you, and through you, just a grab bag of, I want to make sure I'm not on mute here, grab bag of a few things, a couple of responses to comments that you made in response to my earlier comments. But there is, I do not have it in front of me, and I'm not going to stop what I'm doing and look for it, but there is a consultant's report which was appended to a staff report. It may predate this election, that stipulated 18 as the optimal number, 12 if there was some, I think it said substantial downloading to the lower tier. So I read it, I don't have it in front of me, so that's all I can say. Number 2, to mention cost takeouts, there's also, again, I think it's a little dated years ago, that suggested the cost takeouts of going from 23 to 12 was somewhere in the magnitude of 150,000. Sorry, there's something going on in the background here. It was $150,000, but that was before there was any adjustment upwards to the salary of the district staff. Sorry, somebody got a police radio on or something?
Oh, that could be me. Sorry. Hold on.
That's okay. Sorry. So the cost takeouts from 18 to 12 are frankly meaningless. Last three comments, and these are in response to some comments you made, Your Worship. I guess it's interesting at best to understand the number of councillors to the number of humans that reside in Peel region or in Windsor or Essex or somewhere else. But frankly, if there was a formula that simply stipulated, for every 5,000 constituents, you get one vote at district, we wouldn't have this discussion. There is no such formula. That stuff, frankly, doesn't relate at all to the district of Muskoka. And quite honestly, I just don't think it adds any value to the conversation. Number two, if I understood you correctly a few seconds ago, then you didn't understand me correctly when I was talking about the lack of information to substantiate 12. I think I heard you say that it's not good enough for this council to come up with the number 18, that we somehow need to come up with some backup to show why we need 18 and what 18 would do and the impact of 18. And I'm you, that's precisely what I would have expected to receive from the Composition Review Committee to substantiate 12. And if they can pull 12 and throw it on the table and not offer anything to substantiate it, I feel no obligation whatsoever to substantiate 18. The last thing is, I've heard this more than once, this threat that if we don't get this fixed, the minister might step in and fix it. I got to be really honest with you, and I'm not here to win friends. I'm not all that sure the minister could screw it up as much. I'm not sure that would be working in our, against our best interests. The minister at least is accountable to the township of Muskoka Lakes through a vote, democratic election. Most of the people who are going to influence this decision as it relates to our role and our composition at district council are not accountable to the constituents of the township of Muskoka Lake. They're elected through relationships they have in their lower tier communities. So I'm not 100% convinced that that's the worst outcome, having the minister get involved. We need to put outside influences away. We need to solve for our own issues. We need to come up with our own solution. We need to be clear and specific about it. And we need to stand up for what we think those people we represent need in order to be properly taken care of at district. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you. And through you, I wonder for clarity, let's go back to the beginning again. I'm going to use your words for marketing exercise. You're caught up on trying to establish objectives. What was the question? What was the problem? What prompted all this? Is there a letter in front of someone? Does our clerk have a letter that goes back to 2017? Am I right? That says right after the election, you're to do the following within the next 2 years. What is that very specific mandate? What is the district actually asked to do to get us to January the 12th, 2021, where we're having this discussion? What was the problem? What did they ask us to do? Is there 17 things, or is it just get your governmental piece down to where it's more manageable? Thank you.
So I'll give you the I'll call the Coles Notes version. The changes to the Municipal Act have now required that regional governments review their composition within every second term of council. And the concept, I'm not sure how the writing is, but with an idea to become more effective, efficient in council, to make sure that we are doing the right job. So that is, the ministry has given us that mandate, and they did it 2 years ago. So we've been at this now for 4 years and trying to find some solution. And obviously, as you know, we chat around this table. It's not an easy discussion because no matter what it is, potentially, we're not going to have 22 councillors around the table at district. We might have 18, we might have 12. Who knows what that number is going to be? But that is what this provincial government has suggested, that we all need to do that. So that's where it's come from. A supplemental?
Thank you. Through you, supplemental. It's kind of like somebody approaches you on the street and asks you for $1 and you give them 50. Like, the point of the matter is, you know, what are we, we're spending all this considerable amount of time. Something you said really bothers me, and that is we have to justify 18. We don't have, you know what? If this council votes 10-0 to send a notion to the district that we want 18, we don't have to explain that. That's our position. That's what we understand it to be. This is not school. This is not a lecture class where I need to defend a position. It's our position. And I don't understand why we're being drawn down a road where, you know, Councillor Mazan, I've heard all these great comments. You know, people are seemingly settling on 18. We're settling on this and we're settling on that. And again, I'm going to draw myself back to the resolution, or sorry, the document from the Friends of Muskoka and the MLA. It's all in there. It's all in there. It's like a tight little piece. It's done. It's what I would want phase 1, part 1. It makes sense. Why we have to justify anything, Your Worship, I do not understand. I wonder if you could speak to that. Thank you.
I'm more than happy to speak to it because we have an objective, and that's where it's coming back to what is your objective for a more, let me get the specific words, to have a structure which reflects equality for the varied interests sitting around the table. So why do I need rationalization? Because if I can't rationalize 18, we will be voted down at district council. No question. This is, we do not theoretically, if you draw a line in the sand between town and townships, we do not have enough votes to affect the change there. It's going to fail. The triple majority will not pass for 18. At which point, we know, according to legislation, the ministry has the ability to step in and make recommendations. So why do I want comment? Why do I want rationale? So that we can actually sell this and have a justified position for 18. And if 18 fails, then we have that justified position to go to the ministry why 18 is the right number. We can't just make actions based on our wants, beliefs, and everything else. We need justification. And the MLA has given us some justification. I'm asking at times for some additional justification. I'm going to go to Councillor Everts and Councillor Jagowitz.
You know, the whole problem started 50 years ago with the Patterson report. If they had counted the people at the time, you would have had 24 on council. I said this about 4 years ago. Why not go up to 24 with equal representation? And it would have probably cost, if you look at last year's thing, it cost about $46,000 for 2 more councillors to be on. They spent that more on looking at stuff with staff time, with the actual consultants and everything else like that. And that we've heard the people, they've said they want no less than 18. And that it's very simple. That's our rationale for it. That's what the MLA had said, the Friends of Muskoka. We've heard from George and Bay and everything else like that. If Lake of Bays listens to it, the 2/3 is out anyway. And that, so it's just a case of 18 is what we want. There was no justification that I ever heard for the 12. And when you were saying to and that Councillor Mazin, with the 18, it was 10 and 5. When you looked at the 12, it was 7 and 5 originally. So the whole thing is we want equalization. We want 3 from each and that. And I think that's a resolution. If somebody would second, I would have passed and pass it tomorrow and bring it on. Then we can look at all the other cost allocations. Years ago, I fought to get subdivisions taken out of planning at the district. it was blocked by two things. Bracebridge didn't go along with it, everyone else did. And the second was the memorandum of understanding was, well, if the district didn't like it, they'd and that take it to OMB at that time, which is now LPAC. But it should have been downloaded. When you look at all the planning time that goes on to all the subdivisions in Bracebridge, Graven, and Huntsville, that's where you can get savings. If we're talking about modernization, let's modernize the district. If we have to, let's go down to 18 at this time, work before the next election or the next two elections, and modernize the district itself, the staffing, and that's what I would say. And I would, again, like support from council, but I think we should move ahead with that resolution.
Councillor Jaglowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would second Councillor Edwards' motion there. One thing I did want to help you with, Mr. Mayor, you've asked for some justification, and I think it's been given to you, but let me repeat it. The staff reports that the district have prepared, the ones at least I saw, were all based on representation by population, taking the number of councillors, taking what they consider to be the permanent, seasonal, all that stuff, and they ignored the other things that should be considered: communities of interest, effective representation. And that's been laid out in the MLA-FOM documents, okay? And that concept's been endorsed by others. And I think that's your answer. And it's not really the 18 that's important. It's the idea that those 18 are 3 for each and no weighted voting. And so if they want to go to 24, that still does it. And unfortunately, if they want to go to 12, it just doesn't make sense. I think 12 is the right number once there's considerable downloading, but not this term. So I think you've got your justification, and I'd like to see Mr. Edward or Councillor Edwards' motion come forward, and I would be happy to second it.
Councillor Mazan.
Thank you, and through you, just to add, Councillor Kelly had brought up a report, and I'm not sure if this is the report you're referring to, the District of Muskoka Council Composition Review of 2017. I think it's also called the Sancton Report. The final recommendations in there, I'm going to just read the first two. The first is, we believe virtually all participants in this review as seasonal residents should be weighted at 100%. So that's positive. The second recommendation, we agree with the vast majority of participants in this review that there are not enough compelling reasons to support adopting weighted voting by district council at this time. So then it does extend 3 and 4, and I won't, well, actually point number 4 is, we recommend that the voters list be used to determine, and our preferred option is to adopt a 19-member council. So I just offer up that a very talented and engaged group has gone through this previous to us 3 years ago, and there is some good content. So again, if looking for rationalization or further data or information, I found that this was a good report to refer back to as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zawitz.
For you and oh,
you're on mute, Glenn. You're muted.
oh, okay, there we go. Thank you, and through you. So given what I've heard from Councillors Edwards and Jaglowitz, both who are our district council representatives, I have actually formulated a resolution here, but I know that I'd be out of order if we didn't first have some discussions with the clerk and you, the chair. So I won't read what I have as a resolution, but I would ask your indulgence in that regard. We just heard from 20% of the council suggest that they would like a resolution. Clearly there are more of us that would. I have a resolution that I could read, but I don't want to be ruled out of order. So I guess I would defer to you, Chair.
So let me just comment. I've heard a number of people looking for a resolution. I want to discuss the pros and cons of a resolution in a moment, if I can. I just, I want to try and understand, and what I'm getting, no question, that this council when asked and when appropriate, is looking for a council at district of 18, that this council is looking for equal representation from all 6 lower tiers in that particular. So I think those are 2 things. I think we've also learned today, and we have some additional, I'll say rationalization. I appreciate the Sanctum report and against weighted voting. And I think, again, all of that is good, because as we formulate and we move forward, again, our position, I will say, needs to be a defendable position with rationale as to why we're doing this. If we are going to achieve success moving forward, that's what we need to do. So all that is good. I'm going to, Councillor Hayes, do you have a specific question right now? Because I want to try and tick off a couple more questions that I'd like some input on. Do you have a specific question?
No, it wasn't a question. I just wanted to touch back on what Councillor Bridgman had said about having a 1 mayor plus 2, giving us a better opportunity for a more fulsome representation to our diverse population. And that is in the urban areas, if you elect your representatives at large, given the population in the towns, you're going to end up with a township district representative. Whereas if you have 2 representatives, there's a good chance that you will get one from the urban center and one from the rural side. So that's what I wanted to say.
Agreed. So, okay. So I just want to kind of go on. There was a couple of other questions, and when we get to district, so generally speaking, I think we understand Councillor Jacobs would like to go to 12, but we're going to leave it at 18 councillors would be our recommendation at this particular point. And I would agree with that. And I think all the rationale and all the reasons that we've spoken about today, that they provide some greater diversity on each lower tier council to provide greater on the upper tier. From a voting perspective, I don't think there's anyone around this table that is in favor of weighted voting. That we are looking again for that equality, that if there's 18 councillors, that you would need 10 people to move a motion forward. Is that a fair comment? Anybody disagree, want to chime in? Other? I want to come and circle back right now just to the district chair. So some regions, Oxford County, for example, of their 10 members, they appoint a warden or chair, if you will, from within those 10. I asked that question in the document. Is anyone in favor of having one of the 18 as chair of the district council, or a separate district chair? Anyone want to chime in quickly on that? I think we're getting that we'd like a separate district chair. Generally, I'm getting consensus around the table of that, so thank you. We don't want to appoint from within. So now the next question comes, the election of the district chair. And again, as we read through a number of comments, do we want this district chair to be elected at large, have them campaign from Georgian Bay to Lake of Bays, or are they going to be appointed from within that the 18-member district council would be the ones who select the district chair? Councillor Roberts disagrees with that. Gord, you want to comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair and Mr. Mayor. Maybe I misunderstood it, but I believe that the district chair should not come from the 18 or the 12.
Yep.
It should be, as a board of directors in business, the person that's picked would be the right person for the right time. That would have the skills of a moderator, a facilitator, as well as maybe the skills, maybe it's our biggest concern is healthcare, then that person would have a background in healthcare. I just use that as an example. So that's my position.
Okay, so the question that I'll ask again, and I'm sensing, because I'm getting a lot of nods at just Councillor Roberts, I want to make to be sure. So the 18 members would select a district chair from a pool of people who apply for that job. We're all good with that, which is the current process, that the district chair does not have to campaign at large. So the next question is going to be a difficult one, and I just want to have a little bit of discussion. Currently, and has been for the last 50 years, the district chair is the tie break on a vote. If it's 11 versus 11, the district chair has the ability to vote and break the tie. I haven't seen it this term of council. I don't believe I even saw it where the district chair had to vote last term of council. Oddly enough, I do know, and I heard reference the district chair when we were talking about our development charges. It was going to be at one point potentially a close vote. And oddly enough, the district chair would have voted in favor of, if I could say, the townships on that particular case, as it was a discussion. Didn't have to vote, but is there an instance where we would see the district chair vote? Councillor Jagowitz.
Yes, before I address that, I know you stated that before, that he would have gone one way or the other, but he's also a politician, so who knows what he would have done. My view is that I don't think he should vote, she or he should vote, but I accept the fact that the reality is most chairs do vote. So my compromise on that was that he would vote to break a tie after two tied votes on a particular subject. So in other words, there's a vote, it's tied. The members then modify the motion in such a way to break the tie. If they're unsuccessful on the second vote, then he would vote to break the tie. If that's not acceptable, then I just think he shouldn't have a vote.
Okay. I like it. That's an interesting concept. Thank you, Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I do recall where the district chair had to break votes, possibly not the last term of council, although I think there was one time, but certainly it sure affected the outcome of what happened in Bala, quite frankly. And however, that person that we put in that position is again, that's what the public will direct us district councillors of who to vote for, essentially, and in that position. So I don't see, I mean, I would love to, who else is going to break the tie vote, sort of thing. But again, I think it's pretty important to, and I know that I heard it last round with the applicants that came forward, that I heard from members of the public that they preferred to have the current chair in place. And I would look forward to the public telling me that direction as well, if I was in that position to vote for that person.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's the other unique part is, again, once some composition sizes are made, gives, again, Township Muskoka Lakes Council opportunity and the public council to weigh in on got it right, got it wrong, additional changes. So Councillor Edwards and Councillor Kelly.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Harding. I think that the chair should be elected by the 18 or 12 members, whoever it is, and that's one thing. And I don't think they should be allowed to break the tie vote because and that Councillor Jackwood says, "Oh, the second time," so you just hold out and that. I think the thing is compromise, that you sit down and you hammer it out, and that. And I've seen that in other situations where people get their point across, and maybe somebody will change it. But to just say, "Oh well, we'll just have two votes, and we know he's going to break it," I think that there should be a little more input into it, and that I don't know what the answer is, but I think the thing is this: if 18 people sit around the table, I'm sure one of them can maybe amend a motion. We've seen that at our own council, and that I think that's why I'd like the actual diversity. The more, the merrier. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you. This is the one issue, frankly, that I have the biggest challenge with, and it's not a light issue. I appreciate your comments, Your Worship, that that there in very rarely is a tie, but one of the reasons there's very rarely, I suspect, is because of the disproportionate voting power of the towns. We're going to even that up, or we're going to even that up we're more likely to run into tie vote situations. I have a very difficult time giving the authority to break a tie to somebody who isn't elected by the constituents or by the electorate. But I really don't see any easy answer here. I can't imagine trying to run a campaign across this whole region for election. I don't know who would volunteer to take that responsibility and underwrite that cost. I suppose at the end of the day, I would go along, because I'm a friendly, affable guy, with the notion that the council will make the selection, and whoever that person is who's chairing will ultimately be responsible for breaking the tie.
Okay. So some mixed reviews. I think in an ideal world, the chair doesn't have to vote. Push come to shove, maybe we don't want to fall on our sword on that particular one, but we would see where it falls out. Again, and only because, and I like the concept of 2 failed votes, then the chair ties. I think that's another unique way, and I think we may have to unpack some of this stuff slightly differently. What's been provided to me is what happens when there's a deadlock and we can't pass the budget. For whatever reason, there's some, and nope. You know, we might have to make some things move forward, and sometimes there's going to be unpopular decisions that are made. That's the fundamental reality of any politics, let me just say. And you know, if we are successful at equal voting, we have made huge strides in the last 50 years. So I think we need to realize what we may get, what we can get, and we're ultimately getting a better deal, if I can say that, hopefully, for the Township Muskoka Lakes and all the seasonal residents, to try and represent them on a level playing field. So I respect that. Okay, I want to circle back. So I think we've sort of teed off most of the discussion and questions. I think generally people are supportive of 18. I think people are supportive of non-weighted voting, equality among all lower tiers. I think that is unanimous around this council. We talk about election of district chair, being that from district council to elect that person. The question on the table is this township right now passing a resolution to tell district council what we want. And I guess the question that I'm going to ask, and this becomes more of a political strategic direction. There's no question, as I started this meeting off, probably most other district councils, I know district chair, many of the CAOs, many of the clerks will all be watching and providing what goes on at this council. As we discuss going forward, I am very happy to support the direction of this council in a modernization committee that will support 18 councillors going forward. So that is not without question. Strategically, as we work our way forward, we have not been asked for council to chime in at this particular point. Council will have an opportunity to chime in. And I question whether we're putting a bit of a cart before the horse, whether we are potentially limiting our abilities to have fulsome discussion at the district table with our fellow district councillors, because this is the only position of which we are going to hold. Again, Councillor Jago has brought up a unique perspective of second vote perspective. And maybe that's on everything. I don't know, but what other creative solutions are available? And for us to pass a resolution, I believe is premature at this particular point. And I think we can have more fulsome discussion and then strategically plot ourselves next week when our committee potentially makes a recommendation going forward. It's not going to affect the change, theoretically, of the committee. And in some respects, it may frustrate some of the people around the way saying we're not going into an open negotiation. We're going in closed-minded that this is all we want. So I'll put that on the table from a discussion perspective. Councillor Jagowitz.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to relay a conversation I had with the Integrity Commissioner over this subject, okay? And it was ahead of the last Modernization Committee meeting. And what she advised me was that I'm a district representative and I cannot speak for council. I can't describe the wishes of council unless council has taken a position by passing a resolution. If council passes a resolution, then I can speak at the Modernization Committee and represent that view. I have the right because council gave me that right. I don't have to. I can find a way to say that's what council did, but here's my personal view. But if we do not have resolution, then I can only speak for myself. And I don't think on this issue I should. I think I should speak on behalf of council and the people of the township Muskoka Lake. So I think a resolution is very important.
Councillor Nishikawa, then Zavitz.
Sorry about that. Well, I think most of you are aware that I'm not sure why I'm muted now. Sorry.
No, you're unmuted. We can hear you. We just can't see you.
Yeah, I don't know why that happened. Sorry. But anyhow, I've consistently come to this council looking for direction on many items that I vote on at district. I'm not comfortable just giving my own opinions because quite frankly, I live in the bush. I mean, I can quite easily just deal with the, 10 miles of people. That is not my way. I'm a district councillor. I happen to have built houses throughout the district for many, many years. I'm very aware of all of the areas, but I really strongly feel that I need councillors to tell me what I should be bringing forward to district council. So I would prefer that there is a resolution from this council as to we will still be able to express our personal opinions, I'm sure, because that happens often at district council. But for myself personally, I believe that I am looking for representation from this council as they represent constituents that I don't happen to have conversations with on a regular basis, for instance. And so I prefer that type of direction from our council.
Okay, Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, I guess a two-parter, if I might. First, I've heard your words, and so if we pass a resolution today, it seems to me that you're sending us a cautionary note that it will limit us in some way. That takes me aback because it would seem to me that the resolution that we would provide, from the sense that I'm getting from we 10 or we 9 or however you want to put it, is that it's fairly narrow in its focus, and you're going to take it to the district, and on the 18th the district is going to restart the engine and have a fulsome discussion about all these issues. So the point is that I'm trying to understand, why is this the last time we're, I do want to have more input on the district chair and how he's elected, last vote, whatever. I think this is a very narrow focus, and I've been trying to lean on that all this whole session, is that we just stick to our knitting, give you a solid mandate in a resolution that goes in there, but then we can, am I wrong? And so that's the question to you or the clerk. Why is this the end? I don't think it is. There's more to this than this one session. So I have a second part. So if you would be so kind, thank you.
I'm happy to comment. This is the starting point when we go back to that diagram where the township of Muskoka Lakes will be asked for a township opinion. Right now, district councillors are asked for an opinion. I appreciate Councillor Nishikawa's looking for some direction from this council, and I appreciate Councillor Jagowitz's perspective as well. what I'm going to suggest is political acuity as we move forward. The ability to have a phase 2 and react with the township again or not when the township is asked to vote is the appropriate method. They don't say, district council, have all the lower tiers, tell us what you want, and then we'll evaluate it. This is a district council decision. I can tell you right now, I don't disagree, and I will be supporting every action, every conversation that has transpired around this table today. I think Councillor Nishikawa will be doing the same. I'm not saying this is a resolution because it allows me a little bit more flexibility, and it also allows me to have a discussion. And again, everyone's watching this, so they know where our council is going to go. But it allows us a little bit more flexibility moving forward without sticking a stake in the ground. And this is a little bit of, someone used the analogy that we're getting married tomorrow, but by the way, here's the prenup you have to sign tonight. And this is what we want out of this marriage for the next 40 years. So have no issues, and I'll say it again, in relaying the sentiments of this council as we move forward. I will also say I am one voice of this council, and if this council so chooses, I will not stand in the way of a resolution from this council. But I will say, as someone who's going to sit around that table and be on the first modernization committee discussion, you in many respects handcuffed me and my discussion and my ability to achieve what we want here today. And that's all I'm saying to you. So a supplemental, Glenn?
Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate your words. And I've considered those words. Here's my thought, that you are, we are elected officials sitting around the table. I'm one of 10. I was elected by quite a number of people to be their representative. You are my representative at the District of Muskoka. So I'm imploring you to, because I can't fashion your words, sir, when you're in there in the heat of the moment and you're it's a battle, it's a war, it's whatever it is, that I think it would be very obviously relevant here and now to send a resolution with you that is very clear and concise. There's no question about it. It is what it is to this point in time. And then this is, to your point earlier, phase 1. This is part 1. We're going to be discussing this thing for much longer than the next 2 years, it would seem. And this is going to be around as a topic of discussion. So I don't know why we wouldn't create a resolution. I have one here, we can read it, but it's also in that whole notion that we can add to it. We will have more to say, but at this point in time, what we have to say needs to be said very clearly, concisely, and to help you represent us at the district. Thank you.
So I appreciate that. I'm going to go on to Councillor Edwards and Councillor Kelly. Please understand that I am, as well as Councillor Nishikawa and Councillor Jaglowitz, elected to district council independently. If Township of Muskoka Lakes wants to speak as a Township of Muskoka Lakes voice, Township of Muskoka Lakes can speak that way. But speaking through me, I can reference, and Councillor Jaglowitz would like to know, this is what Township wants, and I support this. That's fine. I'm suggesting at this particular point that this is exactly what we want is premature. It has not been asked for. It means nothing. It's kind of like the price of tea in China at this particular point, because the district has not asked for Township of Muskoka Lakes input. They have asked for district councilors input. The district councilors around this table absolutely hear and will represent appropriately, but it gives us a phase 2 and a phase 3 to potentially change and pivot. And if it goes somewhere, maybe we need a more strong resolution saying this is why this is wrong. And I'm giving you my comment as to strategically what we should or shouldn't be doing, but council can choose to do what they want. I'm going to go down the line to Councillor Edwards, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Jaglowitz, Councillor Nishikawa.
I think that the people of Muskoka Lakes have spoke loud and clear what they want. I think this council should make a resolution, and that the thing is this: 18 equal voting, no weighted voting, simple as that. And you can't horse trade that away. I'm sorry, that's what the people want, and if the province come in and try and force it down their throat, the 70 or 80,000 people who live in Scarborough, Etobicoke, and everything else that are going to let their representatives know, and they may be out of a job the next time around. So if the province want to push it down our throat, that's up to them. But I'm voting for what the people have told me they want. I've sat in meetings right back from 2017, and that's when people organized, and that they want results, and I'd like to hear maybe not the actual resolution, but what Councillor Zabitz had in mind. We can always tweet it, but I think also we've been at this for almost 2 hours. A comfort break would be in order at this time. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to work my way through this. I was actually hoping to kind of get to a finish line. Councillor Kelly?
Thank you, and sorry that you were needing a comfort break because I'm on. Through you, a couple of things. There's two sides to this coin, and I certainly understand and have been in this situation where I felt I was negotiating at the end of a gun barrel, and that is not the intention. But we are not here as elected representatives for the Township of Muskoka Lakes to make our own lives any easier or the ability to negotiate a deal any softer. We're here because we actually, have a lot of feeling and have been elected to represent the best interests of the people who reside in the township. We've gone through, I think, a very good exercise, a very pleasantly helpful exercise over the last 72 hours, which has forced each of us in our own way to kind of go back to the first principles, go through the snowstorm of paper, review reports and things we'd long forgotten. We've taken input and feedback from constituents in large groups this morning through delegation, and in smaller groups from people on the street. And quite honestly, I hear no equivocation around council, around this table, as we talk to these issues. We're very clear on what we believe. We're very clear on what we need to do. And quite frankly, I think our obligation is to put it to a vote and determination on behalf of the township as to what our bottom line position is as far as moving this thing forward is concerned. So I'm certainly in favor, as Councillor Edwards suggested, of putting the resolution together in some fashion. I have seen the resolution that was passed yesterday in Georgian Bay. Works for me. Whatever anybody's got, I don't have anything. I would strongly suggest at some point in the near future we debate and take a look at that resolution. Thank you.
So, Councillor Kelly, you brought something forward, and I think I'm getting a sense from council here, and I'm going to try and get us to a comfort break or the end of this meeting, if I may. What I'm hearing is council would like to pass a similar resolution, if I can paraphrase that, to what Georgian Bay passed yesterday. Is that a fair assumption for people? Okay, which I'll come to Councillor Jagowitz in just one moment. Councillor Zabitz, I know you have a resolution that you try and want to read. I need 2/3 at this point. I believe it's just as easy, and you will have my promise that we will introduce a motion without notice tomorrow to consider a resolution the same as Georgian Bay's. Is that acceptable? Councillor Jagowitz wants a conversation. Frank?
No, it's not. I think it should be our motion. We shouldn't be mimicking someone else's. I'm happy to have Councillor Zabitz put his wording forward. The clerks can work with it. And I am asking, since I was a seconder, I believe Councillor Edwards made a motion, and I believe I seconded it, and we should get on with it. Let me just say one other thing, Your Worship, and that is, I go back to what the Integrity Commissioner said. She said, if there's no motion, you cannot say to that committee that what our intentions are, because we haven't made them known. We've had a discussion, but we haven't agreed on anything. You can say
Agreed.
what your personal feelings are. And I think what I hear from other councillors, they don't want you to express your personal feelings, as they don't want me to. They want you and I and the other district councillors to express the opinion of this council. So I'd like to get on with it, sir.
So thank you for that. Let me just make one comment that at district council, each and every one of us will always express our personal opinions. We may also bring together the opinion of Township Muskoka Lakes or our constituents, but we are elected individually. And so that is our job at district council. I appreciate it, Councillor Jagowitz, at this particular point. And at
Please call the integrity commissioner before you speak for council without a resolution.
I will not speak on behalf of council without a resolution. I never said I would. What I'm suggesting is, Councillor Jagowitz and Councillor Nishikawa, at this particular point, even if there's, I believe the modernization committee meeting is next Monday, there will not be a resolution to council, at which point all of councillor can come in. And so in between those two meetings, I believe is the appropriate time for council to fully chime in as to what was stated. But notwithstanding, I'm happy tomorrow to bring a resolution to council with whatever language we want to support for the Township of Muskoka Lakes. And it's not we support this, we support, and I think the resolution, talking in principle, the Township of Georgian Bay passed, we support in principle the position of Friends of Muskoka and the MLA. And I think that is what we are talking about here today. I'll go to Councillor Nishikawa quickly, or do you guys want to just end this conversation and have it come to council tomorrow? Okay, so in that case.
Mayor Harding.
Yes.
Sorry, I quite frankly, I'm finding these Zoom meetings on a bigger picture becoming a little bit abusive, because a request was made to have a break, to not have a break, to basically force people to sit in front of a computer for more than 2 hours. And if someone wanted to go and relieve themselves or something, we would be missing an important part of the discussion. And while your comfort zone may be very different than others, there is protocol that was established with our township, and you're not following it.
Thank you. And Councillor, what I was getting to was people want to continue discussion, so we will take a break. I was hoping to potentially end it within 2 minutes, but we're not. So we will take 10 minutes and come back to the meeting at that point. Thank you. There we go. Council, try and get ourselves coming back in. Councilor Mazan's up visiting Huckleberry Rock. Oh, she's back.
I wish I was visiting Huckleberry Rock. Thank you.
Hopefully in the short or near distance future. Okay, so I see some hands up. My suggestion to move forward, and I know Councillor Zavitz has a potential resolution. I will go to this council at this time, but we will put a resolution on council agenda tomorrow. We can take some time to share that resolution with the clerk and Mr. Hammond and myself and make sure we get appropriate language. And I'll suggest that Glenn and Frank maybe can work on that together. And we would put that resolution on a council agenda tomorrow, and we can pass it directly at council in the afternoon tomorrow. But it gives the clerk's department some opportunity to sleuth it and make sure it's all appropriate as we move forward. Is everyone okay with that as a direction going forward? No, we're not. Okay, Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I want to first of all suggest that I do appreciate, and I think others do, the hard work of all of our district representatives on this council, and I think they're the unsung heroes, as are you, sir. That all the extra effort, we don't actually know how hard it is or how much more work it is, but I certainly thank you. And I used the term earlier, you know, you are our voice. We empower you to go there and do our bidding. And I think in this case, at least that's how I see it. I think some others do as well. So I certainly appreciate all that extra effort. And I think it's important. I do think too, though, today, I think we're on a topic, we're on the subject. There is a resolution that I could read. I don't think it needs any massaging or changing, but that would be up to the will of council. I see no reason why we couldn't proceed with that now and why it doesn't need to wait until tomorrow. We seem very focused and directional on our approach, and all I've seen is people in agreement. So, but only with your approval would I suggest we go through that process of getting to where I could read that resolution.
Okay, so I will say, first of all, to put a resolution on the table today and or tomorrow, because we haven't provided 24 hours notice. As a matter of fact, actually, we could put it on a supplemental agenda tomorrow and provide appropriate notice. We have 28 minutes to do so. And I think that is appropriate at that point. We would need to introduce that motion today, 2/3 of a council perspective. And I think this is a big topic and that it should go on a supplemental agenda and should be vetted and discussed. That's my perspective. But I will also look to our council today because you asked for my opinion. I suggest that we put it straightforward tomorrow. We will get to the same finish line. And I think we'll get to a more transparent finish line versus rushing something forward. I haven't had an opportunity to see that resolution. And again, if I can, call me the lead negotiator, if you will, at the district in modernization as the one on the modernization committee. I'm recommending that we hold off at least until tomorrow before we make our statement and our claim as to what exactly it is the Township Muskoka Lakes wants. But Councillor Nishikawa has a question and Councillor Edwards has a question.
Thank you. Actually, my question was going to be even prior to the break that perhaps, like, I would like to hear the direction that Councillor Zavitz is going in, not in the form of a resolution. We often have done this in the past where we bring forward those ideas, but it doesn't have to be in form of resolution. I would rather hear that today than sort of try to cram it in tomorrow, because, you know, the discussion is fresh today and I would just like to hear. I haven't had the privilege or I don't have any knowledge of what the direction that Councillor Zavitz would like to go here, but I do believe that there is an opportunity for us to get a flavor of where he's coming from, and I hope that you would allow that.
So again, I will say I don't have an issue having a conversation and a flavor. We have at one point, and I think that the fellow district councillors will also note, where we have tried to have resolutions written by council councillors and not by staff, and having the opportunity for councillors or staff to write a resolution for us has gotten us into some questions and problems at the district. And I guess I'm going to suggest again, I don't mind having a discussion. I don't mind having an opportunity as to what that resolution should look like, but I firmly believe that it should go on a supplementary agenda tomorrow and then be published as to exactly, and let the public see exactly what that resolution is versus us passing a resolution today and then having to amend or change or make reservations because we're all asked to deal with a significant topic in the next 25 minutes. So, Councillor Edwards.
I don't have a problem with the resolution coming tomorrow. We can announce it, though I thought this was a special council meeting and we should be allowed to pass one. But I would also like to hear what Councillor Zabik is putting forward. And I think we should have that motion long before tomorrow so we can all read it and make changes if we have to. But it should be coming to council. I think it will be it will be passed, and I think that's the way it should be done. But I'd like to hear Councillor Zabik's.
I agree, and I think we're just trying to get to a process moving forward. Councillor Kelly?
I'm going to withdraw my comment. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Zabitz wanted to pass a motion today. I'm suggesting that we have a discussion about what is included in this motion. Councillor Zabitz can provide his motion to the clerk's department and to our CAO, who can tweak and make some changes, and we will send that motion out to everybody tonight, but we can also announce a supplementary agenda for tomorrow, and it gets passed appropriately with some time and pause tomorrow in council. Councillor Zabitz is the one who was willing to move that. First of all, are you okay with that? And then I'll go to Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, and through you. We've had a document in our hands since January the 8th. It's now the 12th. We had a questionnaire dumped on us on Friday and asked for it to be responded to on Monday at noon. Here's my point. This is the most benign of moves. This is the most benign of resolutions. There's no trickery. There's no hidden agenda. If you would allow me to read it just for public information, I'd be happy to. And then we could discuss it from there, if that is even protocol.
So again, if you are putting a discussion on what a resolution has, there's not a problem. If we're putting a resolution on the table for us to vote on today, number one, we have to have 2/3. Number two, we're going to need to have a copy of that resolution for the clerk to be able to put it on the screen. Number three, I'm going to suggest that, again, I haven't had an opportunity. I couldn't support, I may say yes, but I haven't thought through all the permutations potentially. And it may be benign, and I'm happy to have a benign resolution come forward tomorrow. So again, I don't know how to be more clear to say, we're going to get your resolution forward. We're going to get council's perspective pushed forward. But from a process perspective, we're not going to introduce it at the beginning of a meeting and say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put it on a supplementary agenda. We're going to allow the public to chime in on it. And we're going to allow council to chime in on it. And then we can have a debate about it tomorrow. I'll go to Councillor Evers and Councillor Kelly.
I would still reiterate that I would like to Councillor Zabik to read what he is proposing. It's not a motion, it's coming tomorrow, but I'd like it read now so we can start and not changing it if we want. Thank you.
I agree with that. I'm just trying to make sure that it's not a moved by, seconded by, because we can't read a resolution without council approval. Councillor Kelly, you put your hand back up. And you're on mute. Councillor Kelly, there we go.
Yeah, I sense that the will of, sorry, through you, I sense the will of council now has changed and we're willing just to listen to the guts of the resolution. I'm clearly not going to overturn that, but I'm extremely frustrated by this process. Okay. And then we'll just let Councillor Sklavix read it out if you would.
Thank you. Glenn? Okay, so council, with that, we'll have a discussion about what can go into this resolution. We'll have Councillor Zabitz forward that resolution off to our CAO and the clerk, and we will be implementing a supplemental agenda for tomorrow's council meeting. Glenn, over to you.
Thank you, through you. It simply reads, be it resolved that council endorse the principles outlined in the letter dated January 8th, 2021 from the Muskoka Lakes Association and the Friends of Muskoka and supported by several local community associations regarding the district council's modernization review, and that this resolution be circulated to the District of Muskoka's Municipal Modernization Committee, period. It couldn't be any more benign than that. Very straightforward. The documents are in all of our hands and have been for 5 days. There's no hidden agenda here. So I don't know what you'd add to that. Thank you.
I appreciate that, but again, I respectfully suggest that we do need to understand that, and I would like our staff eyes to have a comment on it. Councillor Jagowitz.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I'm actually glad now that you are bringing this forward tomorrow. I would like that. I think there's nothing wrong with that motion, but I think it should also state what it is we want. That's a lengthy letter. I think it should say we can have support for their position, and then make it clear that we're asking, our position is that we want eight district councillors, 3 from each area municipality, and no weighted voting. And I would like the clerk department to, I don't care if it references another letter or whatever, but that it makes it very clear what we're actually voting on. Thank you.
Okay. So Councillor Zavitz, to the point and the reason I'm happy to have this discussion today, clearly some councillors would like some more information in that letter, and I appreciate that it is benign. So I think that's why good decisions are made with some pause and some time, and happy to do that. Councillor Roberts.
Very quickly, yes, I would like the resolution to specifically state our position rather than referring to a third party's letter, which I thought was good, but I think ours should be specific.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Any other comments? Okay, so councillors out. Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you. I would be happy with a resolution that simply states what we've talked about today. I believe that the MLA and Friends of Muskoka is great, but they are an interest group, and I would be happy to leave the motion clean of any reference to any interest groups at all. And then we are simply stating what we have said today. So that would be my comment.
Okay, maybe we will have a couple of options, but we're going to put an agenda item on the supplemental agenda tomorrow. We will try and get out a proposed resolution. I see our CAO writing feverishly, and we'll try and craft something, and we will run that back through Councillor Zavitz, who was the mover of that motion, and maybe Councillor Jagowitz, just to solidify everything. Councillor Edwards?
Yes, I agree with Councillor Bridgman, and that it should be our motion, and that it's basically council size is 18. It's equal right across, 3 from each municipality with no weighted voting, so that they were absolutely clear. And this is the request of the actual ratepayers or constituents of the township. So, but I think we should have ours very, very clear what we want. Thank you.
Okay. Agreed. I think staff are well aware of that. So with that being said, any other comments at this point? I think we can adjourn this meeting. And I have a resolution moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-003 to confirm the proceedings of council be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Councillor Jagowitz has a question.
Yes, Your Worship. I don't think we should leave this meeting until we have at least had some commitment that we're going to move forward on the other part of what this meeting was, the modernization part. So would it be appropriate for staff to come back to for a report at the next meeting and next cycle, setting out some plan to deal with those issues that we didn't deal with today, and how we're going to try to move that agenda forward at the district? Would that be appropriate, sir?
So I think it is interesting that in our strategic plan, as Councillor Bridgman pointed out, that is very much a strategy. So we will be moving forward with that. And I think it's also something that we can, as district councillors, when we get to modernization, bring that forward as a request of the district. And I think when district modernization gets, whatever changes happen, then I think it is truly appropriate at that time when we chime in officially as Township Muskoka Lakes Council, we also bring that issue back up at that point, fully understanding where we are going to be. So again, it's a staged process, and they've asked for input at a certain point. We're advancing that in one case, but I think we might be adding a little too much in this resolution at this point to chop off, and knowing that it's in our strategic plan.
Supplemental. Yes, that's all well and good, and we should respond, but we should be prepared to respond. I've made a request, sir, that staff come back with a proposal at the next meeting cycle as to how we're going to move those forward. And I appreciate the, do I have to do that formally somehow to get that done?
So the staff have noted the request, and we will be able to advise when we can get to that portion within our strategic plan. Let me just put it that way.
Sorry, that's not what I asked. I didn't ask for it to come forward within our strategic plan. I asked for it to come forward with the plan at the next council meeting. I don't mean we'll discuss it at the next one, but they'll come forward with a procedure. Are we going to form a special committee? How are we going to deal with it? What is, so I've made that request. I won't repeat it again. Thank you.
Okay. I have read the motion to confirm proceedings of today. All those in favor? That is carried. One more. Moved by Councillor Hayes, second by Councillor Jagowitz. Be it resolved, this meeting adjourn at 12:46 p.m. and the next regular meeting of council will be held on Wednesday, January 13th, 2021 at 1 p.m. electronically in the council chambers, municipal offices, Port Carling. All those in favor? That is carried. And I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you if our delegates are still listening. Obviously, this is a controversial topic, and everyone has a passion about where Muskoka Lakes ends up out of this. So I appreciate that. And now we work on getting it done. We can pass all the resolutions we want, but it's actually a matter of getting to the finish line, so to speak. So thank you all for that. And we will see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.